Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I join the chairman in welcoming our witnesses to the hearing this afternoon. Last week, we had a tragic loss of life for the Marine Corps and the Navy family with the crash of the KC-130 tanker in Mississippi. Our thoughts, are with the families of the 15 Marines and one sailor who lost their lives in service to our country. The investigation into this tragedy should guide our decisions going forward to prevent these kinds of tragedies and to provide support for our sailors and Marines. Over the past weeks, we have held hearings on the future of a number of Navy and Marine Corps programs. A major subject in these hearings has been the Chief of Naval Operations' new force structure assessment that points to having a fleet of some 355 ships. That would amount to an increase of some 80 ships from the current fleet inventory. Today's witnesses will tell us about President Reagan's expansion of the Navy that increased the fleet by roughly 70 ships by the end of the 1980s decade. We hope to gain some insight from our witnesses today on what happened during the 1980s to increase the Navy's fleet. Reviewing that history may help us deal more effectively with the challenges facing us today. Our task before us is daunting enough, but we have to recognize that the Budget Control Act is looming in the background and will have to be dealt with. While that law necessarily raised the debt ceiling, it also imposed draconian caps on defense and non-defense programs and included sequestration. Sequestration, or automatic across-the-board cuts, was included as a worst-case scenario to motivate Congress. The mindless cuts to defense and non-defense programs were meant to be so bad that Congress would be forced to find an alternative way forward. We all learned a lesson in 2013 when sequester was allowed to take effect. In fact, some in our industrial base are still working through the aftermath of that fiasco. Yet here we are, 6 years later, living with sequestration still not eliminated. Funding for critical programs, both defense and non-defense, is not an either-or proposition. One thing is clear: if we do not deal with the Budget Control Act, we would end up cutting, not increasing, the size of the Navy. We all know the ongoing negative impact of sequestration and yet have not mustered the political will to do something about it. My hope is that at some point, sooner at this point rather than later, we will come together to pay more than lip service to the need to end sequestration. So I look forward to working with the chairman and other committee members to balance the needs of our military with critical domestic programs. The Navy has not submitted a plan for ramping to meet this new 355-ship goal. Presumably, we will begin to see that plan with the submission of the fiscal year 2019 budget. I look forward to hearing your testimony this afternoon and learning from your out-of-the-box experiences in the 1980s. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.